application is. Okay. So a bit about myself first. My name is Ty Ebel. I am originally from East Tennessee, grew up in Chattanooga. And as a college student, or sorry, as a high school student, I actually first learned about the JET program. I had the privilege of taking Japanese in high school, and both of my Japanese teachers that I had while there were JET alumni. So they were the first kind of introduction that I had to JET. Then I also had the chance to go study abroad. I spent a semester, not a semester, a summer in Japan as a high school student doing a homestay. And there too, in the high school that I was at, I got to join the JET ALT who was posted there to help out with some of her classes from time to time. Now, when I went off to college, unlike a lot of you, I didn't end up focusing on Japan. But when it came time to graduate, I started looking for opportunities to go live abroad. And because of all the connections that I had, the familiarity that I had with Japan and with the JET program from my high school days, I decided to go ahead and apply for JET. I applied the year after I graduated, and I got on to JET in 2007. I wound up spending 3 years, 2007 until 2010, in a small town called Yamamoto-cho in Mitoyo City, Kagawa Prefecture, right about where that red dot is on the map in Shikoku. I was in a town of about 7,000 people. I was the only Westerner, the only native English speaker in my town. I was about a 30-minute bike ride to the nearest native English speaker. So somewhat isolated, somewhat rural, but nothing too crazy. Did JET, loved it. After finishing the program and after 3 years, I did something that a lot of JETs end up doing. I applied to graduate school and I went on and got a master's degree. In my case, I got a master's degree in policy. Worked for a Canadian company for a while before moving to Nashville and starting this job at the Consulate General of Japan in 2015. In fact, LinkedIn just reminded me a couple weeks ago that I've now been here for 9 years, just hit my 9-year anniversary. And in that time, I've gotten to send a lot of alumni, a lot of graduates from MTSU on the JET program. In fact, in that time, MTSU has become the largest school for JET participants. So good going, guys, in the state. Now, a bit about the JET program. And again, this first part of the presentation is going to be fairly general, so a lot of you may already know this stuff, but it's always worth a reminder. First, JET is an acronym for Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. And I think there is a lot of importance in that name, and it's worth dissecting. First, Japan, because this is a Japanese government program that's sending folks to go live over in Japan, to work in Japan. The third word, teaching, pretty obvious. You're going over to teach in most cases. You're doing English language, cultural exchange in Japan. But that middle word, the exchange, I think is equally important to both the Japan and the teaching. This is, in fact, a major part of Japan's soft diplomacy effort. The idea is that we're taking people from all over the world, we're moving them to communities in Japan with the expectation that they will share their culture, their experiences with their Japanese host community, but also that they'll deepen their understanding of Japan, that they'll deepen their connections with Japan. The JET program itself, it's limited. You'll be there for 1 to 5 years, but the hope is, and when we're successful, that the reality is that we're forging these relationships, we're forging these bonds that really do last a lifetime. When you go to apply to the JET program, as you're putting your application together, keep the name in mind. You need to highlight Japan. You need to highlight exchange, and you need to highlight teaching and explain why you're a great candidate for a program that combines these 3 components. We are an initiative of the Japanese government, and we basically connect applicants from around the world with local governments and schools across Japan. We've been around since 1987, so for 38 years now. And in that time, we've sent close to 80,000 people onto the program, about half of them coming from the United States. JET offers salary jobs that last 1 to 5 years, which means that you're earning a good wage, being responsible, developing professional experiences, all while having a really cool international experience and really getting immersed in Japanese culture. There are two main positions that we hire folks for on the JET program. The first, and by far the largest, is the ALT, or Assistant Language Teacher position. That's what I did when I was over there. ALTs sometimes will work in kindergartens, but are generally based at elementary, junior high, and or senior high schools. They might be at one school, they might be at multiple schools. It depends on who they're working for, the town, the prefecture that they're working at. In my case, I was at one junior high, Mitoyo Chugako, which is the building up on that hill there in the photo. Um, Again, I was in the countryside, so it was a pretty easy commute. The photo was actually taken from right outside of my apartment, so it was only about 5 minutes from my door to my desk at the school, which was nice. Monday to Friday, every day, 5 days a week, I would ride my bike right up there to the school and teach at the junior high. On Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, though, I would also rotate between the 6 elementary schools that fed into the junior high. So there's a photo of me with the elementary school students. And it was pretty interesting. It was pretty fun, like getting to see the different age groups. As you might imagine, Japanese junior high kids, I mean, they're the Japanese version of American tweens. They were great in some ways, difficult in others. Not always the most eager to engage in class or answer questions. Meanwhile, the elementary school kids, you could ask a question, everyone's got their hand up. Nobody knows the answer, but they all want to try their best to give an answer. So it was fun kind of going between those two in my experience. Now, as far as what an ALT does, as the name implies, you're there as an assistant to a licensed Japanese teacher. Basically, there's a Japanese teacher that's going to be in the classroom that's going to be in charge of discipline, going to be in charge of making sure the kids are, hitting the curriculum goals, learning what they need to learn to get into high school, to get into college. While you're there to motivate the students, to give them a chance to interact in English, to give them the chance to learn about foreign cultures. Now, most of you guys probably in high school studied Spanish. That's what most folks in the US seem to study. Here in the US, if you're studying Spanish and you want to go out and practice Spanish with a native Spanish speaker, it's pretty easy. You'd be hard pressed to find a community in this country that doesn't have a native Spanish speaker that you could go practice with. In Japan, almost everybody is studying English from elementary school onward. But in a lot of these communities, there just aren't native English speakers. So you're learning this, but if you didn't have the ALT in the classroom, if you didn't have this real life opportunity to engage in the language, you would never really get that opportunity. So that's really what you're there for. You're there for the language and the cultural exchange. Now, what you do in the classroom will really depend on the grade level that you're teaching and also the teachers that you're working with. You will see a lot of variation. Even in my case, I worked with 7 or 8 different teachers in my time on JET. Each one was a bit different. Some wanted my role in the classroom to be really limited, kind of like that. You might have heard of the human tape recorder. I would do pronunciation practice, and that was about all that I would do in the classroom with them. Other teachers really wanted to plan ahead, wanted to come up with activities, different ways to engage the students in the classroom. And so as part of the job, you do need to learn to work with the different teachers, the different teaching styles, and really do the best that you can for the students in the situation that you find yourself. The other position that we hire for on the JET program is the Coordinator for International Relations, or CIR position. About 10% of the folks that we're sending over are going over a CIR. As I understand, maybe at least one of the folks on the call today might be interested in this position. CIRs are generally working in government offices, and their job requirements really differ from one placement to another. In a lot of the more rural settings, smaller towns, you might find yourself doing a decent bit of teaching. You might find yourself doing some basically almost borderline social work. One of my friends that was a CIR in Kagawa, his community had a lot of Filipino immigrants who spoke better English than they did Japanese. So he would go around and do wellness checks with them. You may find yourself organizing festivals, international days, putting together English language newspapers, leading adult community language classes. You may also find yourself, and you almost certainly will find yourself doing some level of interpretation and translation. Anytime a delegation comes from another country, a sister city exchange or something, you'll be trotted out and you'll basically act as the official translator for your host community. Because of this, the CIR position does require a high level of Japanese language ability. It's the equivalent of at least N2 of the JLPT. So that's higher than what you probably get as just a standard Japanese major. But if you've studied abroad in Japan, you've really laid into it, there is definitely that possibility to be up to that level of Japanese. And I would suggest that you consult with your Japanese teachers to see kind of where you sit on the spectrum if you haven't actually taken the JLPT itself. Now, there's all the stuff that you do in the classroom, there's all the stuff that you do at work, and then there's everything else that kind of falls into that exchange bucket. Some things that you might find yourself doing as an ALT are participating in school festivals like Undokai or Sports Day, perhaps helping out with after-school clubs, particularly if you're really into a particular sport or traditional art. There may be a club at the school that you can get involved with that you can take a leadership coaching position in. A couple of things that I did. One thing that I did was I worked with the local international office to put on Western themed events. So we would do a Halloween party, we would do a Christmas party. Once or twice we did a bit of an Easter thing. Another thing that I did was I taught an Eikaiwa. So this was an evening community group, more or less volunteer, that met at the local library. It was something that had been arranged well before I got there, about a decade before I got there. Some members of the community had reached out to the principal of the Mitoyo Chugako and gotten permission for the ALTs to start leading this group. And ever since then, the ALT at Mitoyo Chugako had taken on the Eikaiwa. The photo right here at the bottom is actually of me with my Eikaiwa on my very first day meeting them. This was my first week in Japan. Again, they knew that I was coming. My predecessor, an Australian jet named Joanne, had connected me with the Eikaiwa leaders, so I'd already exchanged some emails with them before I got there. And on my first week, one of the gentlemen, KG, in the blue shirt beside me, came and picked me up at my apartment. I was in a rural setting, but we went, about a 20-minute drive to the nearest city that had a hotel with a beer garden on it. And so this was kind of the welcome party in 2007 at the beer garden. And I really enjoyed my time with the Eikaiwa. It was with this group that I really, got to know members of the community, that I really got to engage with the community. These were the folks that would be inviting me out to go on fishing trips, that would be inviting me to participate in festivals, notifying me of little things that happen in the community that I might otherwise miss, inviting me over for dinner parties, all kinds of things like that. And it's this group that I primarily kept contact with when I left Japan. So again, this photo was in 2007, and I left Japan in 2010, but I did keep in at least passive communication with a lot of the Eikaiwa members over the years. In 2017, I made a return trip to Japan. I'd gotten married the year before, and so I took my wife with me. This was her first time coming to Japan. And as we were discussing the trip, she was wanting to go to Kyoto. She was wanting to go to Tokyo, these big name destinations that, all the Americans know about. And I just kept telling her, I was like, well, okay, we can hit those places, but we got to go to Shikoku. We got to spend our time down there because that's where my people are. And sure enough, we hit the big destinations. We got down to Mitoyo, to Yamamoto-cho. This is a photo from my night there in Yamamoto-cho. They threw a big welcome party for us. In fact, because we'd been married about a year before, it doubled as a wedding party, a second wedding party. They had a wedding cake. They'd gotten kind of awkward photos of us off Facebook that they had displayed on the wedding cake itself. But it was a great experience. And when we left Japan, as we're flying home, we're doing a debrief of the trip. And my wife told me, she was like, you know what, you were right. Kyoto was fascinating, Tokyo was fascinating, but the best part of the time was the time that we spent down there in Shikoku with all your friends and host family. There was a pandemic, as you know, in 2020, so I didn't make it back to Japan for a while. But just this past spring, I was able to go back again. This time, the family's grown, so I was able to take my 2 daughters to Japan and introduce them to the Ikaiwa and to all my friends in the community. And I like to show these photos and tell this story to really drive home the reality that, again, JET program is time limited, but as long as you do it right, as long as you maintain the connections, it really is an experience that can last a lifetime. You really can create develop a relationship in which you have, a second hometown on the other side of the planet. Let's see. Seems to be loading slowly. Okay. Now, a bit about the workplace, the compensation. First of all, as I mentioned before, the JET program runs the selection of folks to go participate on it. But when you're over in Japan, you're directly employed by what we call a contracting organization, which will be a government office. It'll be a particular school. It'll be a town government, a prefectural government. Each one's going to be a little different. So you'll see some variation in the JET experience. Some things that are universally the case, though. First of all, you're working, as per your contract, 35 hours a week. Typically, that's going to be Monday through Friday, especially for ALTs. There may be some occasional weekend work. For instance, sports day at my junior high, I would go in on Saturday, and then we'd be closed. We'd have a comp day off the following week. CIRs may find themselves, a lot of my CIR friends found themselves working more weekends just because they were doing things like coordinating international festivals that took place on the weekend, and then they would get other comp days off. The schedule there is quite nice. First of all, 35 hours a week isn't really that much work. You'll have plenty of time to pursue your own interests, to study Japanese, to prepare for graduate school, whatever it is that you're wanting to work on, pick up a new hobby. Also, because you're working Monday through Friday, kind of normal daylight hours, it really allows you to get involved with the local community. There are companies out there that do jukus or ikaiwas, kind of after school, after hours English classes. A lot of times it's pretty easy and quick to get a job with one of those. The downside, though, is that you find yourself working on nights and weekends. Nights and weekends are when most Japanese people have off, and that's why you're working at those times. But it also means that you're missing out on the festivals, you're missing out on the barbecues, you're missing out on a lot of the fun stuff that the community is getting involved with. Whereas on the JET program, again, exchange is key to it. You are getting to get involved in all that. With JET, you're on a 12-month commitment. So if you're going over in August, you're committing to stay through the following August. If you're doing a good job, if your contracting organization is happy with you, then generally speaking, in the winter, you're given the chance to recontract. You can recontract up to 4 total times for a total of 5 years on the program. As I said, I spent 3 years on JET. Most jets are going for 2 to 3 years, but we do have a lot of folks who go for the full 5. In fact, Laura was talking about her daughter. She did the full 5 on JET. When you go on JET, you are paid. You're paid 3.36 million yen that first year, broken out monthly. That's actually more money than what an entry-level Japanese teacher is getting paid. So it's comfortable. You can, you have your own accommodation. You can go out and eat. You can go out with friends. You can travel. You can live pretty well on the salary that you're getting as a JET. The salary goes up every year for the first 4 years. You also have your transportation to and from Japan covered. So assuming that you're selected and that you get in and you apply through the Nashville consulate, you'll need to come to Nashville, which I know is no great imposition for folks in Murfreesboro. You'll need to come to Nashville for the orientation, but then we'll have you covered onward to Tokyo, where you'll have a big orientation in Tokyo, and then to wherever it is that you happen to be based in the country of Japan. At the end of your time on JET, we'll then have you covered to get back here to the US. You're also enrolled in National Health Insurance Program, as well as accident insurance, travel insurance, various other insurance programs. Really good health insurance. I never really had to deal with it myself, but great coverage. My friends who had to deal with it, my jets who I've sent in my time as coordinator, they report back really positive experiences dealing with Japanese health insurance. In addition, you get 10 days, at least 10 days of paid time off per year. So that's 2 weeks of kind of flexible time off that you could take to come home and visit friends and family, to travel around Japan, to travel around Asia, as well as all the national holidays that they have in Japan. So just like in the US, we've got MLK Day, we've got President's Day, days when the public schools are closed and no one needs to go in. You got long weekends. Japan has those too. They just have a lot more of them. In a normal year, it averages out to about 16 per year. Now that PTO, those 10 days that you get off, that's the minimum that you'll be allotted. A lot of jets do get more than that, but the least that you'll find in your contract is 10 days. Now, we've got placements throughout Japan. We've got over 5,000 jets in Japan at any given time, and basically every year there's about 2,000 new jets who come in to replace jets who are leaving. A lot of the placements are in smaller towns and rural environments, like the one that I was in, but we do have urban placements as well. In fact, about 10% of the total jet placements are in the Tokyo metropolitan area. When you apply to JET, you can list preferences. If there's a particular place that you'd like to live, you can list up to 3 preferences, as general as a region of Japan or as specific as a town in Japan. The important thing to keep in mind, though, is that with the JET program, you're applying to live in Japan, not live in a particular place. In my experience, while a lot of JET placements are honored, a bunch aren't. It could be that you request. In my case, I requested Ehime because that's where I did my study abroad, or my homestay. And I wound up being put in Kagawa Prefecture, not too far, but not where I'd requested. And when you think about that, it's because I think it's pretty logical. A lot of folks, everyone knows about Kyoto, everyone knows about Nara, Tokyo. There are places that a lot of folks are requesting. A similar thing if you've studied abroad, a lot of these big universities that have a lot of exchange students coming through, bunch of people feel connected to those areas and are requesting to get a placement in those areas. And there are just more people making those requests than there are places that need ALTs in those particular places. At the same time, these rural communities, these towns like where I was, Yamamoto-cho, nobody's asking for those because no one even, unless you just really like scrolling, deep diving on Google Maps, you would never know that it exists, right? And they still need ALTs. And that's why it's set up that way. That's why we tried to accommodate placement preferences, but there's a decent chance you'll be placed someplace new and exotic to yourself in your experience. Now, the JET program, in addition to the general benefits, there are additional things that you can take advantage of. There are skill development grants to get a TEFL certificate or to take the JLPT. When it comes to getting onto JET, I emphasize the need for a strong level of Japanese for the CIR position. You may have noticed I didn't mention Japanese with the ALT position. It definitely helps to know Japanese, but every year I send at least a handful of folks over there who haven't had a chance to study the language yet. Now, just because you haven't studied the language, though, doesn't mean that it's easy to be in Japan if you don't know the language, right? We want everyone that we're sending to take the opportunity to improve their Japanese, whether they're starting from a low level or from a high level. Toward that end, we do offer online courses that everyone is strongly encouraged, that not required to take, while they're JET participants, that can help you improve your language. Some prefectures, some cities will also offer in-person courses that you can take. And for those who are really improving their Japanese, there is the chance to be nominated to do training seminars and interpretation and translation for those of you who really want to boost up your Japanese. All jets, by virtue of being on the JET program, are members of something called AJET, or the Association of JET. The best way to consider AJET is kind of like a student government organization. It's the sort of thing that you can be quite involved in if you want to be quite involved, or that you can be barely involved in, if that's not really an interest of yours. The way that it plays out, for me, I was at the prefectural level. I was a leader in our Kagawa AJET. I was the social chair for a couple years, which meant that I put together the welcome party, the welcome event for the jets that are arriving. I put together the farewell event for the jets that are departing. We would do a big Halloween event, like costume party every year that was really popular with Japanese people as well as foreigners. We would do volunteer events. We would do just general get-together events. JETA or AJET also offers counseling services like peer-to-peer counseling. They offer special interest groups. And then at the national level, the JETA leadership or AJET leadership actually meets with Japanese government officials to discuss ways to improve the JET program to help jets out. Now, you're not the first person who'll be going on the JET program. You're far from the first person who's going to be coming back. And one of the great things about JET is that the Japanese government continues to support JET alumni through JET alumni associations. I'm an active member of the Nashville-based Music City JET Alumni Association, and I can tell you that we get money from the Japanese government every year to put on different events. We have a monthly, we call it a Tomodachi Kai. It's kind of like a happy hour get-together event for alumni to get together and network. We do a yakiniku barbecue. We do a curry cook-off about once a year. Oftentimes we'll have a tent sponsored at different festivals like the Nashville Cherry Blossom Festival or the Memphis Japan Festival. And so this is another great way to kind of, once you come back, to engage with the broader community. Now, a lot of folks are curious, rightfully so, what kind of career they can find themselves getting involved in after the JET program. And I think it's important to note that because we consider a pretty broad spectrum of individuals, you can actually apply to the JET program. You need a bachelor's degree, but it can be in any major, any concentration. Because of that, you'll find that jets work in a pretty diverse range of fields. A lot of times it will equate to whatever they were studying in university, or if they're coming into the JET program after working for some time in a professional setting, a lot of times they'll go back to that field. But some of the areas that jets tend to gravitate toward: teaching. In fact, tonight there's going to be, and I can share the information if folks are interested, but there's AJET, sorry, not AJET, JETA is hosting a panel discussion about Japanese teaching, working as a Japanese teacher in Kentucky, and the process for doing that as a JET alumni. A lot of jets go into teaching. A lot of jets go into educational nonprofits. They work at universities and administrations. They do international education, study abroad offices, things like that. A lot of jets work in international relations for the U.S. Department of State, but also for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the Japanese government. Case in point, here in Nashville, we have 7 American-born local staff, and 4 of us are JET alumni. For what it's worth, 2 are MTSU alumni as well. 1 is an MTSU alumni and not a JET alumni, so they don't perfectly overlap. But another area that you'll see a lot of JET alumni in our region working in is with Japanese companies. So you may be aware the largest source of direct foreign investment for the state of Tennessee comes from Japan. There are a lot of Japanese factories, a lot of Japanese manufacturing, a lot of corporate headquarters based here in Tennessee. Just here in Middle Tennessee alone, you've got the national headquarters for Nissan, for Bridgestone, and for Mitsubishi, and then a lot of other smaller companies that feed into those big ones. A lot of jets, they're coming back with these great soft skills, cultural awareness, some language skills. And so a lot of them will find themselves taking on jobs in sales or in HR with these companies. If you've got the high level of Japanese, you might also look at working as an interpreter for one of the Japanese companies in our area. So with that, I'll move on to the application process. First of all, eligibility criteria. Hopefully you guys already know this, but to apply through the JET program USA, you need to be a US citizen. We do have over 50 countries represented on the JET program, but the way the Japanese government works it is that you just have to apply through your country of citizenship. So if you're not a US citizen, you would need to reach out to the Japanese embassy in your country of citizenship. You'll also need a bachelor's degree by the time you start the program. So anyone who's a senior who's going to graduate by next summer, next June, you're good to go ahead and apply now. The final one that I want to kind of focus on here, good mental and physical health. What this means is that if you're seeing a doctor for anything, if you're taking any prescriptions, if you have any diagnoses, if you've had any major surgeries, as part of the application, there's a self-assessment form that you need to fill out. And then if you have anything to list on that self-assessment form, there's an additional document that you're going to need to have your physician fill out. Ideally, it's a physician that you see regularly, but it could be any physician or nurse practitioner who can fill it out. They just need to go over everything that you've explained in the self-assessment, and then there's a checkbox where they say that in their professional opinion, you're good to go, that this won't impede your ability to go and participate on the JET program.
I think in the past, we've had some students go to our health services if they're a current student. So,
yes. Yeah, we see a lot of that. A few other criteria, excellent written and verbal English skills, strong interest in Japan and Japanese culture. And I'll hit on that one again in a minute. But just to drive home, I'd mentioned that you don't need to know Japanese to become an ALT. You have to have the strong Japanese to be a CIR. But regardless of your Japanese ability, you're going to need to demonstrate that interest in Japan. Because this is a government-run program, the taxpayer program, they want to know that the people who they're investing in have the interest, a genuine interest in their country and their culture. Now, as far as what makes a great JET, and this is a good slide, I would say, if you're applying, feel free to jot these terms down, do a screenshot. Any of these that apply to you, this is what you want to get across in your application. This is what you want to get across at the interview. A lot of it's pretty obvious, I would think. Adaptability, patience, flexibility. We're taking people, sending them to the far side of the planet where they'll be far from their friends and family. You're going to be in a new culture. There's going to be lots of new things that you're going to need to adapt to. But even beyond that, every school is going to be different. Every teacher that you work with is going to be different. Every classroom, every student. So you do need to be flexible. You do need to be able to handle a lot of changes while you're over there on JET. Positive attitude, good sense of humor. Most JETs will talk, and we like to, get back and riff on our days in Japan. And there's lots of things that could be interpreted as microaggressions that you're going to come across over there. You can be there for, a decade, and you're still going to have people compliment you on your chopstick skills at least once a week. So you are going to be seen as a foreigner. You are going to be different in Japan. You need to keep up a positive sense of humor, and just kind of roll with it. You're also going to be pretty much the center of attention in a lot of cases in your community. Not the center, but there is going to be a lot of attention focused on you. In my case, I remember once I actually caused a car accident, not by doing anything in particular, just by riding my bicycle down the sidewalk. A woman was driving by and started rubbernecking so hard, like surprised that there was this white guy, I guess, on a bicycle in her town, that she beached her car up on a curb. I kept going because I had somewhere to be, but on my way back, like an hour later, she was gone, but the car was still stuck up there. It took a day or two for her to get that car off the curb. But that kind of stuff happens over there, because it is a pretty homogeneous society, and you are going to be different. So you need to go over with that awareness. Again, passion for education and cross-cultural exchange, and that genuine interest in Japan and Japanese culture. Now, every year, the application follows a similar timeline, opening up on our website in late September and closing in mid-November. This year, it was September 24th when it went live, and the due date to submit your application is going to be November 15th. We're pretty firm on, extremely firm on deadlines with the Japanese government. November 15th means November 15th. Don't reach out on November 16th asking for an extension. That's just not going to be possible. Once we have the applications submitted, that's when we do the initial screening of the applications. And we basically determine who's going to get the interview or not. That process is handled by the embassy, and only about 50% of the people who submit an application ultimately get invited through to the interview. So it is a bit of a hurdle to jump over. Nothing to stress about. Just keep in mind when you put in the application, when you're working on it, do your best to make it as thorough, as complete as possible to make sure that you maximize the chances of getting that interview. And I'll get into some advice on that in another slide or two. You'll find out in January whether or not you get the interview. The interviews are going to be virtual this year, so they'll be done over Zoom probably that first week of February. After the interviews, there's going to be a bit of a waiting period. We'll write up our summary, we'll send it off to Tokyo, and then they'll respond back and let us know who they want to be on the short list, who they want to be giving a slot to on JET, who they want to be on the waiting list, or we call it the alternate list, and then who just isn't successful. I'll communicate that information to y'all sometime between late March and mid-April. You'll then have about a week to let me know if you are offered a slot, whether or not you accept. Up until this point, everything is, very, very friendly. You can apply to JET and Fulbright and graduate school all at the same time. And in April, when you're offered your slot on JET, you can let us know, sorry, I've decided to go to graduate school instead. No problem, no commitment made up until that point. In April, though, when you tell us that you do want to accept the slot, that's when the commitment's being made. And that's when on the Japan side, they start pairing you with the contracting organizations. You'll find out where you're going to be living in Japan in the early summer. And then you'll depart from Japan. It's typically the first Saturday in August. This year, it's August 2nd that we'll be sending everyone out. Now, like I said, we recruit from a pretty broad spectrum of universities, of majors, of academic backgrounds. But there are certain experiences that can really help you stand out in the application process that we really emphasize. As a teaching program, shouldn't be a surprise, any teaching or tutoring experience that you have is great to highlight. For the juniors on the call, seniors, there's probably not much opportunity you have to really polish that. But juniors, if you're not applying this year, look for opportunities to build up that teaching experience. Actual paid teaching experience, professional teaching experience is obviously best, but even tutoring, even babysitting, camp counseling, anything like that is going to help in the process. Also, Japanese language study and engagement in Japanese cultural activities. So I'm assuming a lot of y'all probably have taken Japanese or are taking Japanese at MTSU. There's a great Japanese program. If there are any folks who aren't applying this year who haven't had a chance to take Japanese but are interested in JET, one of the best things you can do for yourself is just pick up an entry-level Japanese course before you graduate at MTSU. Engage with the Japan Club, the Japan Table on campus. Get involved if you haven't, if you're not applying this year, with the Cherry Blossom Festival next year. Do things with Japanese exchange students on campus. Just look for ways to kind of show that interest in Japan. Also, international intercultural experience. Cream of the crop would be if you do a semester or more studying abroad in Japan. That looks great. But any study abroad that you do to any country is going to look good. Any international experience overall that you get is going to be great. And beyond that, any intercultural experience. You don't have to leave the country to get intercultural experience. You can get that right on campus with international students, right in Murfreesboro by volunteering with immigrants, by volunteering with refugees. Look for ways to kind of hone your intercultural experience. And then finally, general work history. This is a professional program. We're looking for people who are responsible, who are going to show up properly attired to work, on time, ready to do the job. And one of the best ways to gain our confidence in your ability to do that is by showing a track record of showing up to work on time. So general work history is also a great thing to have. Now, I will say, and every year, folks are asking, do you have to have all of these? What if you don't have any teaching experience? Well, if you're applying this year and you don't have any teaching experience, there's nothing you can do about that. I would say think hard and see if there's anything that you could list as teaching experience. But every year, some of the folks that I'm sending over are going over with no teaching experience. Some of the folks that I'm sending over are going over without any Japanese language ability. Some of the folks this year, one of the guys I sent over had never been on an airplane before. A lot of folks getting right out of college don't have the work history. Maybe they've had an on-campus job and that's it. That's understandable. You don't have to check every one of these boxes with a bold pencil. But it does help to have some experience that touches on each of them, if possible, and certainly to have some strengths. And when you have those strengths, to be sure to highlight them. This is my second to last slide before I open up to final questions. Helpful hints when it comes to the application. And first of all, and this is pretty obvious, but read the instructions carefully. You'd be surprised how many people wind up disqualifying themselves because they just don't read the instructions. They do something wrong. It's nothing to stress about. Just double check everything. Make sure that you've read the instructions. When you're filling out the application, and this is less obvious, but there are different sections. So there's the international, intercultural section. There's the teaching experience section. There's the work section. Try to fill those out as thoroughly as possible. Virtually no one is going to have an application in which they fill out every single box on every single page, but try to fill out every single box that you're capable of filling out. So when you start filling it out, I would say you can save your progress on the application. Don't do it all in one night. Go ahead, start it, start filling it out, hit pause, think on it, jot down some notes. Like, what are some other intercultural experiences I've had? Talk to your friends, talk to your family, and your memory might be jogged something else that you could list if there is an extra space to list something. If you're dealing with a lot of experiences and you're trying to choose which ones to list, most recent, most relevant, most impactful, those are going to be the things that you want to highlight. Outside of intercultural, international experience, we're basically just interested in what you've done since high school. So anything you did in high school isn't really going to help you. List things that you've done since you graduated high school. Focus on that. The length of time that you did something matters. The focus matters. So, for instance, international experience, a trip to Japan is going to matter more than a trip, some spring break in Cancun. Just keep that in mind and use your own judgment when deciding what to focus on. Also, keep in mind that we're assessing you on each individual category independently. So sometimes I get asked, I do have professional experience. I've been paid as a teacher. I was a substitute teacher. I got paid for that. Should I list that in teaching or in work experience? The answer is list it in both, because that way you can get credit for it in work experience and you can get credit for it in teaching experience. If you only list it in one of those sections, we're only considering it in that one section, if that makes sense. Every year, well, I'll go back to the intercultural experience. Every year, I'll be reviewing applications for the embassy, and I'll come across someone who leaves that section entirely blank. And then I get to their statement of purpose. And in their statement of purpose, they start off with, I was born in Mexico and moved to America at the age of 5. Well, that right there is some great intercultural, international experience. That right there would be really helpful to score them on. But because it was not listed in the international intercultural experience section, they didn't get the points for it there, right? It's still, it's good to know, but it's not really helping them get the points that they need to make the interview. So again, double check. It's okay to repeat yourself. Just fill out the application as thoroughly as possible. The statement of purpose is going to be that 2-page cover letter that you submit with your application. It is extremely important. I know these days it can be easy just to have ChatGPT write something for you, but whatever ChatGPT is going to write is going to be vague, and it's probably going to be obvious that it wasn't written by a human. So make sure to really take the time to write your own statement of purpose, to really highlight what makes you great for this program, and to give specific examples. Anyone can say that they're good under pressure. Give us an example of a time that you were under pressure and how you were good under pressure. As part of the application, you'll also need to get 2 reference letters. If you're currently at MTSU, then one of those is going to need to come from someone at MTSU. The other could come from a faculty member or from an employer. General advice with reference letters. First of all, give the reference writer plenty of time, heads up. Don't be asking them to write a reference on November 14th for an application that's due on November 15th. Also, make sure that they're familiar with the program that you're applying for and that they're going to find a way to write the letter for that program. So if you're reaching out to, one of our faculty members here on the call right now, they're well-versed in JET. You can count that they'll know what they're writing the reference letter for. But if it's someone else who might not know much about the program, go ahead and give them a brief summary of the program. Let them know those attributes that we're looking for so that they can tailor that letter to this particular job. And finally, make sure that the folks who are writing the reference letters that you asked to write the reference letters can be relied upon to actually submit the letters on time. If the letters are not submitted by the deadline, then you've got an incomplete application. When you fill out, and I talked previously about that self-reported medical conditions form, quite important, that needs to match the physician's form that you're turning in. A lot of these doctors, they're quite busy. They need to see a patient every 10 minutes or something, so they're flying through these forms. A problem will arise, though, if the physician lists something that you don't list or vice versa. If you say that you have depression and they say anxiety, that's a problem. If you say that you're taking a particular medication and they say that you're taking a different medication, that's going to be a problem. You can't rely on them to fill it out exactly correct. So just before you leave the clinic, look it over and make sure that everything that they listed matches what you listed on your self-report. Proofread the application before you go to submit it. Utilize the resources on campus. Laura's office is great to work with. The Japanese department's great to work with. Other folks, other classmates who are applying to JET, also worth, maybe having them look over your application, have them look over your statement of purpose, as many eyes as possible, just to make sure that you're putting together the best representation possible. It's all online now, so all the documents that you're going to upload, you're going to do it digitally. Some things are going to require scanning. So proof of citizenship, you'll either need a birth certificate or naturalization papers or a passport. Make sure that when you scan it, that it's clear and legible. If it's really pixelated, if the scan's really dark, if you have trouble reading it, then there's a decent chance that people at the embassy won't be able to read it, and it'll be marked down as incomplete. It's nothing to stress about. It's nothing, please don't email me like scans and ask if they're legible. If you can read it, then you're good. Just make sure that you can read it before you upload it. And finally, the application deadline is November 15th, but that doesn't mean that you should wait until November 15th to submit your application. Go ahead and submit it when you're ready. Try to submit it ahead of time because you never know, something crazy could happen on November 15th that delays you from submitting it. And if it ticks into November 16th, the deadline's passed and there's nothing that we can do for you. This here is a photo of the group that we sent this summer. One of the great things about being a Japanese government program is that every year the consul general typically is able to invite the departing jets over to his official residence for a nice dinner put on by his official chef. So it's a great opportunity the night before you leave for Japan to meet with each other, to meet with diplomats, and to meet with area alumni and kind of really launch your jet experience even before you hop on that plane. Hopefully, I'll get to see some of you guys in this photo next year. The website, you guys probably already know this, is jetprogramusa.org. That's where you can access the application. My email address is jet@nv.mofo.go.jp. Feel free to reach out if you guys have questions. Try to check the website first. Try to make sure that the questions aren't published in an obvious place before you reach out. But if you've got a specific question you can't find an answer to, I'm happy to help. Just keep in mind that I am traveling a lot at this time of year recruiting for JET. So there's there might be a delay in my response. Finally, you can follow us on social media, particularly if you're not graduating this year, if you're not applying this year, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You'll get a reminder when the application goes live next year. You'll get application tips. And if you aren't already following the consulate at Japan in Nashville, go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram, Japan in Nashville. That Instagram account was actually created by one JET alumni / MTSU alumni and is now being curated by another JET alumni and MTSU alumni. So you can help out your fellow Raiders. MTSU Raiders, is that? Yeah.
Blue Raiders, yes.
The Blue Raiders. And so that's the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions.